The memorial hall went silent as Captain Hana Kim walked slowly toward the center stage. Her steps were careful but steady. At 68 years old, she moved with the grace of someone who had spent decades in low-gravity environments. The crowd of 500 people watched her with a mix of respect and curiosity. Hana was the last true Terran, the final human born on Earth soil before the planet was destroyed. The massive space station called New Dawn orbited the gas giant Rigel 7, its silver structures gleaming under the distant sun. Inside the memorial hall, the lights dimmed as Hana reached the small table at the center of the stage. She placed her hand on the smooth metal surface, steadying herself. 200 years, she said, her voice clear through the speakers. 200 years since Earth was lost to us. The audience remained quiet. Most of them had never seen Earth except in videos and simulations. They were the children and grandchildren of refugees, born on stations or colony worlds. To them, Earth was just a story, but to Hana it had been home, if only for 5 short years before the evacuation. She reached into the pocket of her blue uniform jacket and pulled out a small glass jar. The jar was simple, with a metal lid that showed signs of age. Inside was a dark gray powder, ashes from Earth. Real Earth soil, not the manufactured dirt they used in the hydroponic gardens. My grandmother collected this soil from our family land in Korea before the final ships left, Hana said, holding the jar up for everyone to see. She told me it contained everything that made Earth special, the microbes, the minerals, the very essence of our first home. In the third row, a young man named Tae leaned forward. He wore the green uniform of the station's science division. His eyes never left the jar as Hana continued her speech about remembrance and legacy. The memorial ceremony continued with songs and readings. Different station groups presented their yearly achievements, showing how humanity was adapting to life among the stars. But through it all, Tae kept watching the jar of ashes that now sat on the small table beside Hana. When the ceremony ended 2 hours later, people slowly filed out of the hall. Many stopped to speak with Hana, touching her hand as if some essence of Earth might transfer to them through contact with the last Terran. Tae waited until most people had left before he approached her. "Captain Kim," he said with a small bow. "My name is Tae. I work in the genetics lab on level 6. Hana smiled politely, but with the tired expression of someone who had met too many people in one day. "Nice to meet you, Tae." "Your jar of ashes," Tae said, his voice dropping lower. "Have you ever had it properly analyzed?" Hana's smile faded. "It's not a science experiment. It's a family treasure." "Of course," Tae said quickly. "I didn't mean to offend you, it's just that—" He glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "I've been studying the old Earth restoration projects, the failed attempts to recreate Earth's ecosystem on new planets." Hana picked up the jar and tucked it back into her pocket. "Those projects were banned by the Galactic Council 20 years ago. Too many disasters. I know. The Proxima colony lost 30,000 people when their restored Earth bacteria mutated," Tae said. "But I think the Council is wrong. I think they gave up too soon." A security officer in a black uniform walked past them, giving Tae a suspicious look. Talk of Earth restoration projects always attracted unwanted attention. The station security took Galactic Council laws very seriously. "You should be careful what you say in public," Hana warned. Tae nodded and pretended to talk about the ceremony until the officer moved away. Then he leaned closer to Hana. "What if I told you that Earth's destruction wasn't just bad luck? What if something out there wanted to make sure humans never returned to rebuild it?" Hana had heard conspiracy theories before. Every year after the memorial, someone would approach her with a new idea about Earth's destruction. She was about to politely excuse herself when Tae said something that stopped her. "The ashes you carry, if they're really from unprocessed Earth soil, they might contain dormant extremophiles, microorganisms that can survive almost anything, even 200 years in a jar." Hana looked at the young scientist more carefully. "And why would that matter?" "Because Earth life was unique," Tae said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Something in its biology was evolving in a direction that scared someone, or something. The official story about the asteroid impact that destroyed Earth never made sense to scientists. The trajectory was too perfect, too precisely aimed. Group of station officials entered the hall, starting to set up for the next event. Tay glanced at them nervously. I shouldn't say more here, but if you're interested in learning what your grandmother's ashes might really contain, come to Lab 12 on Level 6 tomorrow. I work the night shift. No one will see you. Before Hana could respond, Tay walked away, blending into the small crowd of people still lingering after the ceremony. That night, Hana sat in her private quarters, the jar of ashes on the table in front of her. Her small apartment was one of the few on the station, with a window. The gas giant Rigel 7 filled most of the view, its swirling storms creating patterns of orange and red. She opened the jar and looked at the gray powder inside. Her grandmother had divided the original collection among 3 jars, one for herself, one for Hana's mother, and one for Hana. The other 2 jars were lost years ago when a transport ship was damaged. Only Hana's remained. She had always thought of the ashes as a symbol, a reminder of a lost home. But what if they were more? What if Tai was right? Hana closed the jar and placed it back on the table. Opening a drawer, she took out an old paper photo. It showed a small house with mountains in the background. 3 women stood in front of the house, Hana as a child, her mother, and her grandmother. It was taken just days before they boarded the evacuation ships. 2 centuries later, humans had spread across dozens of star systems. They had survived, adapted, even prospered in some ways. But they had never found another planet quite like Earth. And with each passing generation, the memory of their original home faded a little more. Hana looked back at the jar of ashes. Tomorrow she would visit Tay's lab. Not because she believed his theories, but because after 200 years, the jar of ashes was the closest thing to Earth that remained in the universe. And Hana was the last person alive who remembered the feel of Earth's soil between her fingers and the sound of wind in real trees. She owed it to that memory, to listen to what the young scientist had to say. The science labs on Level 6 were almost empty during night shift. Most researchers preferred to work during station daytime hours. This suited Tay perfectly. Fewer people meant fewer questions. Lab 12 was at the end of a long corridor with bright white lights. Hana checked that no one was watching before she pressed her hand to the door scanner. Tay had temporarily added her prints to the authorized list. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Tay was not alone. 2 other people in green science. Uniforms looked up as Hana entered. Captain Kim, Tay said, moving quickly to close the door behind her. Thank you for coming. These are my research partners. This is Jin, our data analyst. Jin was a tall man with round glasses that reflected the blue light from his computer screens. He gave Hana a short nod. And this is Sue, our genetic specialist, Tay continued. Sue was a young woman with her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Unlike Jin, she smiled warmly at Hana. It's an honor to meet you, Captain, Sue said. My grandparents often spoke about Earth. They were children when the evacuation happened. Hana looked around the lab. It was larger than she expected, with several work areas separated by clear glass walls. Equipment hummed quietly. In one corner, a machine with a dome-shaped top glowed with green light. You said you wanted to analyze my ashes, Hana said, taking the jar from her pocket but not yet handing it over. I want to know exactly what you plan to do and why. Tay exchanged glances with his colleagues. Jin typed something on his keyboard, and the large screen on the wall lit up with images. Hana recognized them immediately. They were pictures of Earth from space, showing the blue oceans and swirling white clouds. The official story is that Earth was hit by a large asteroid, Jin said, his voice quiet but clear. Random chance, they said. Bad luck. But look at this. The image changed to show a simulation of the asteroid's path. Jin tapped a few keys, and red lines appeared, showing the trajectory. This was no accident, Jin said. The asteroid changed course 3 times before impact. Something guided it. Sue stepped forward. The Galactic Council has banned all research into Earth restoration projects because every attempt to recreate Earth's ecosystem has failed catastrophically. But what if they failed because someone wanted them to fail? Hana looked at the three young scientists. They all had the intense focus of people who believed deeply in their work. But belief wasn't enough when dealing with matters this serious. "This sounds like conspiracy thinking," Hana said. "Do you have any real evidence?" Tay moved to another workstation and picked up a small metal container. "We've been secretly collecting and analyzing samples from different human refugees, bits of cloth, old coins, anything that might contain traces of Earth material." He opened the container to show Hana several small compartments with tiny samples. "Most have nothing useful," Tay continued, "but a few contain bacterial spores or plant material that survived. The problem is, none of these samples are pure or large enough to work with properly." Hana looked down at her jar of ashes. "And you think mine is different?" "Your grandmother collected soil directly from Korea," Sue said, "and your family kept it sealed all these years. If your jar contains viable extremophil bacteria or fungal spores from Earth, it could be the purest sample in existence." Hana still hesitated. The ashes were her most precious possession, the last physical connection to Earth. "We only need a very small amount," Tay assured her. "Less than a pinch, and we won't damage it." After a moment of thought, Hana handed the jar to Tay. "Be careful with it." Tay took the jar with both hands, treating it like a sacred object. He carried it to a workstation where Sue had prepared several small testing devices. "We'll start with basic analysis," Sue explained as she carefully opened the jar. Using a tiny metal tool, she took a small sample of the ashes and placed it on a glass slide. "This will tell us what elements are present." Jin typed commands into his computer, and a scanner above the workstation hummed to life. A beam of blue light passed over the sample. "Interesting," Jin said, looking at the results appearing on his screen. "High carbon content, traces of iron, phosphorus, nitrogen, expected for soil." Sue nodded. "But look at this organic signature." The three scientists leaned in to study the data. Hana couldn't understand the technical details, but she could see their growing excitement. "There's something alive in there," Tay whispered, almost in awe. Sue quickly prepared another sample and placed it under a powerful microscope. The image appeared on the wall screen, magnified thousands of times. Tiny structures became visible in the gray ash, some round, some elongated. "Bacterial spores," Sue confirmed. "And some look like they might be fungal, in dormant state." Jin was typing rapidly. "Comparing to our database, this doesn't match any known species from colony worlds." "Because they're from Earth," Tay said, his voice rising with excitement. "Actual Earth microorganisms that have survived 200 years in dormant state." Sue added a drop of clear liquid to the sample. "Let's see if they'll activate." The screen showed the magnified image as the liquid spread through the sample. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, one of the tiny structures began to change shape. "It's working," Sue said. "The spore is activating." Hana stepped closer to the screen, watching in amazement as a life form from Earth, her Earth, began to wake after 2 centuries of sleep. "What kind of bacteria is it?" she asked. "We don't know yet," Tay said. "But this is already more than we hoped for. These organisms might contain biological information that was lost when Earth was destroyed." The lab door suddenly slid open. Everyone turned in surprise. A tall man in a black security uniform stood in the doorway. Commander Doe, head of station security, looked at them with cold eyes. Behind him were 4 armed guards. "Unauthorized research," Doe said, his voice flat. "Potential violation of Galactic Council Directive 157 regarding Earth restoration technologies." Jin quickly pressed buttons on his computer, but it was too late. The guards entered the lab, weapons ready. "This research is illegal," Doe continued. "All materials will be confiscated. All personnel will be detained for questioning." One of the guards reached for the jar of ashes on the workstation. Hana stepped forward. "That belongs to me," she said firmly. "It's a family heirloom, not a research sample." Commander Doe looked at her with something like pity. Captain Kim, I respect your service record, but you must understand the dangers here. The last Earth restoration attempt killed thousands, including my younger brother and his family on Proxima Colony. Tay tried to explain. Commander, this is different. We're not trying to restore entire ecosystems. We're just studying the microorganisms to understand. Silence, Doe interrupted. You were not authorized to conduct this research. The Council's ban is absolute. The guards began collecting all the samples and data devices. Sue quickly slipped something into her pocket when they weren't looking. As Hana watched the jar of ashes being placed in a security container, she felt a strange mix of anger and determination. Something important had been discovered here tonight, something that powerful people wanted to keep hidden. This isn't over, she whispered to Tay as the guards prepared to escort them out. Tay nodded slightly. Meet me at Dock 7 tomorrow, hour 22, if you want to know the truth about Earth. Before Hana could ask what he meant, the guards separated them, leading Ty and his colleagues toward the detention area and escorting Hana back to her quarters. As she walked between two armed guards, Hana thought about what she had seen in the lab. Life from Earth awakening after 2 centuries. And the fear in Commander Doe's eyes when he saw it. What truth about Earth could be so dangerous that the entire Galactic Council wanted it hidden? Dock 7 was used mainly for maintenance vessels and small cargo transports. At hour 22, when the station lighting dimmed to simulate night, the dock was nearly deserted. Hana stood in the shadows near a stack of supply containers, watching the few workers finishing their shifts. She had spent the day trying to get her jar of ashes back through official channels. Her status as the last Earthborn human usually gave her some influence. But this time, all her requests were denied. The ashes were classified as materials of interest in an ongoing security investigation. A soft hiss of hydraulics caught her attention. A small maintenance door opened, and Tay slipped through. He wore a gray worker's jumpsuit instead of his science uniform. He motioned for Hana to follow him. They moved quickly through narrow service corridors, avoiding the main passageways, where security cameras would see them. After several minutes of walking, they reached a small airlock. Where are we going? Hana whispered. Off station, Tay said simply. Jin and Sue are waiting. They released you from detention? Tay gave a small smile. Not exactly. Let's just say Jin is very good with computers. He created a system error that unlocked our cells. Hana hesitated. This is serious. If we leave the station without permission, we'll be labeled as fugitives. We already are, Tay said. Commander Doe has classified us as research criminals. Under council law, we have no choice now. Through the airlock window, Hana could see a small research vessel. It wasn't much larger than a shuttle, but it had the extended fuel tanks of a ship designed for longer journeys. I need to know what we're doing before I step through that door, Hana said firmly. Tay looked around nervously, then nodded. Before security took us, Sue managed to save a sample of your Earth bacteria, and Jin downloaded all our initial findings. What we found is incredible, Hana. The microorganisms in your ashes aren't just alive. They're part of a complex biological system that we've never seen before. What does that mean? It means Earth had developed something unique, something that might explain why it was destroyed. He looked directly at Hana. And we think we know where to find more answers. But we need your help. Hana thought about her life on the station. For 60 years, she had been treated as a living museum piece, trotted out for ceremonies to remind people of a planet most had never seen. Maybe it was time to do something more. I want my jar back, she said. We're going to try, Tay promised. But right now we need to leave. Security will realize we're missing soon. Hana took a deep breath and stepped into the airlock. The research vessel was cramped but well equipped. Jin sat at the control panel, his fingers moving rapidly over the screens. Sue was securing equipment in the small lab area at the back. Captain Kim, Jin said without looking up, glad you decided to join us. Where are we going? Hana asked as Ty sealed the airlock behind them. To the outer systems, Sue answered. To a quarantine planet called Sanctuary. Hana had heard of Sanctuary. It was where the largest Earth restoration project had been attempted 20 years ago. After it failed, the entire planet was placed under quarantine. That's a restricted zone, Hana pointed out. Exactly why security won't expect us to go there, Jin said. Station sensors show our trajectory headed toward the core systems. By the time they realize we've changed course, we'll be too far to track. The ship's engines hummed to life. So do I. A small screen, Hana could see the docking clamps release. They were moving. We have another passenger joining us at the maintenance platform, Tay mentioned. Someone who can help us understand what we're dealing with. As the ship pulled away from the station, it swung around to a small external platform where maintenance robots were usually stored. A figure in a spacesuit was waiting. The ship stopped briefly, just long enough for the figure to jump aboard through a side airlock. When the helmet came off, Hana saw a man with a thin face and serious eyes. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept in days. This is June, Tai explained. He was a data specialist for the Galactic Council Intelligence Division. He defected after discovering some troubling information. June nodded to Hana. Captain Kim, it's an honor to meet you. He's the one who first alerted us to look into the Earth samples, Sue added. Jin's voice cut through the conversation. Security, vessels launching from the station. We need to go now. The engine surged and everyone grabbed handholds as the ship accelerated away from New Dawn Station. Through a viewport, Hana could see the massive structure growing smaller. The gas giant Rigel 7 filling the background. I accessed the security storage before leaving, June said, reaching into his bag. I thought you might want this back. He handed Hana her jar of ashes. She took it with genuine surprise and gratitude. Thank you, she said, holding it carefully. But I want to know what you've discovered that's worth risking everything. June exchanged looks with the others, then nodded. The Council has been lying about Earth's destruction for 2 centuries. It wasn't just an asteroid. Earth was deliberately targeted. By who? Hana asked. We don't know their real name, June said. In the classified files, they're called the Architects, an advanced species that has been monitoring developing civilizations for thousands of years. Jin interrupted from the control console. 3 pursuit ships on long-range sensors. We need to reach the jump point before they catch us. The ship lurched as Jin pushed the engines harder. Equipment rattled in the cabin. The Architects eliminate any civilization that develops certain biological technologies, June continued, holding onto a wall strap as the ship accelerated. Earth was developing something naturally that scared them, a biological system that could rapidly adapt and share information across entire ecosystems. Sue added, the microorganisms in your ashes show signs of this system. They're not just individual bacteria. They're networked somehow, sharing information in ways we don't fully understand. A warning alarm sounded. Jin cursed under his breath. They're gaining on us, he said, and they've locked weapons. Can we outrun them? Tay asked. Not to the jump point. Jin's fingers flew over the controls. I'm going to try something else. The ship banked sharply, heading toward a debris field, remnants of an old mining operation. The pursuing ships followed, firing warning shots that flashed past their hull. They won't destroy us, June said, seeing Hana's concerned expression. They want the samples back too badly. The ship shuddered as a shot grazed their engine housing. Red warning lights flashed across Jin's control panel. Engine cooling system damaged, he reported. We can't maintain this speed for long. Hana looked at her jar of ashes, then at these 4 young people who had risked everything based on what they believed was hidden in the simple gray powder. She had spent decades as a living symbol of Earth's memory. Maybe now it was time to fight, for Earth's future. The old emergency protocols, she said suddenly, from the evacuation fleet. Does this ship have a manual navigation system? Jin looked surprised. Yes, but it's almost never used. Give me control, Hana said, moving toward the co-pilot seat. I trained on the original Earth evacuation vessels. There's a maneuver we use to avoid asteroid fields that might work here. Jin hesitated only briefly before transferring control to Hana's panel. The pursuing ships were closing fast. Hana's hands moved with practiced skill across the controls. The ship responded, diving sharply into the densest part of the debris field where the larger security vessels couldn't follow. "If we can just reach the jump point," Tay said, watching the pursuers falling behind on the sensor display. "Sanctuary is only one jump away." But as they emerged from the debris field, a final shot from the lead pursuit ship struck their engine. Directly, the lights flickered and the ship began to tumble. "Engine failure," Jin announced. "Jump drive still functional, but we've lost main propulsion." "Can we make the jump?" Hana asked. "Yes, but we can't control where we'll come out near Sanctuary," Jin warned. "We could end up crashing." Hana looked at the others. They all nodded in agreement. Whatever waited for them on Sanctuary was worth the risk. "Make the jump," she ordered. Jin activated the jump drive. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines of light, and then everything went white as they entered jump space, leaving their pursuers behind. But where they would emerge, and whether they would survive the landing, remained to be seen. The research vessel broke through the cloud layer of Sanctuary, its damaged engines screaming in protest. Jin fought with the controls as the ship dropped too fast toward the planet's surface. "Brace for impact," he shouted. Everyone grabbed onto anything secure. Hana held her jar of ashes tightly to her chest with one hand, the other gripping a ceiling strap. The ship hit the ground hard, skidding across an open field. Metal screeched against soil as the vessel carved a deep trench before, finally coming to a stop. For several seconds no one moved. Then Sue coughed and looked around. "Is everyone alive?" she asked. They were shaken but unhurt. The ship's emergency systems had protected them from the worst of the crash. Outside the viewports they could see a landscape that looked strangely familiar to Hana. Open grassland with distant hills and a sky that was almost earth blue. "Atmosphere readings?" Tay asked. Jin checked his panel. "Breathable. Slightly higher oxygen than station standard. No detected toxins." This was supposed to be an Earth analog planet, June said. "That's why they chose it for the restoration project." Hana stood shakily. "How far are we from the research facility?" "About 12 kilometers north," Jin said, studying the navigation system. "Assuming it's still there after 20 years of abandonment." They gathered essential supplies and equipment. The ship wouldn't fly again without major repairs, but the communications and power systems were still working. They could send a distress signal if necessary, though it would reveal their location to the council. Tay made sure they packed the small sample case containing the active microorganisms from Hana's ashes. Sue brought portable analysis equipment. Jin grabbed data pads and emergency rations. They stepped out of the ship into the sunlight of Sanctuary. The air smelled fresh with hints of plants and soil. A light breeze ruffled the grass around them. "It feels like..." Hana paused, surprised by her own emotional reaction. "It feels a little like the Earth I remember from my childhood." June looked at her with interest. "You actually remember Earth?" "Just fragments," Hana admitted. "I was only 5 when we left. I remember the sky, the smell of rain, my grandmother's garden." They began walking north toward the abandoned research facility. The terrain was easy to cross, with rolling grasslands and occasional patches of unfamiliar plants with blue-green leaves. "This whole planet was terraformed to match Earth conditions," Tay explained as they walked. "The project team introduced Earth-like plants and microorganisms, trying to recreate a complete ecosystem. And it failed catastrophically," Jin added. "Plants mutated. Bacteria evolved in unexpected ways. The team lost control of the experiment." Hana looked around at the peaceful landscape. "It doesn't look like a disaster zone." "The problems were at the microscopic level," Sue said. "Organisms developing in ways they weren't supposed to, changing too fast. The council shut everything down before it could spread further." After several hours of walking, they crested a hill and saw the research facility in the valley below. It was a cluster of white buildings surrounded by what once had been experimental fields, now overgrown. "It looks abandoned," Jin observed. "Let's approach carefully," June warned. The quarantine is still officially in effect. There might be automated security systems. They made their way down the hillside, alert for any signs of danger. But the only sounds were the wind in the grass and occasional calls from small flying creatures in the distance. The main entrance to the facility was locked, but Jin quickly bypassed the old security system. The doors slid open with a groan of unused mechanisms. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. Emergency lighting activated automatically, casting a dim glow through the corridors. It looked as if everyone had left in a hurry. Personal items still sat on desks, half-empty cups long since dried out. The main lab should be this way, Tay said, leading them through the building. They entered a large room filled with complex equipment. Most of it was covered with dust, but some machines still had power indicators glowing. "Someone's been here," June said suddenly, pointing to a workstation that looked recently used. There were no dust layers on the keyboard. A noise from a side room made them all freeze. The sound of something metallic falling, then footsteps. "Who's there?" Tay called out. Silence. Then a man stepped into the doorway. He was thin, with a wild beard and clothes that had been patched many times. He held a metal rod as a weapon. "Who are you?" the man demanded, his voice rough from lack of use. "How did you get past the quarantine?" Hana stepped forward. "We're researchers from New Dawn Station. Our ship was damaged. We mean no harm." The man stared at them suspiciously, but lowered his makeshift weapon slightly. "My name is Yoon," he said. "I was part of the original research team. I stayed behind when the others evacuated." "You've been here alone for 20 years?" Sue asked in disbelief. Yoon nodded slowly. "Someone had to stay, to watch, to understand what went wrong." He looked at each of them carefully. "Why are you here?" "The Council forbids anyone from coming to Sanctuary." "We're looking for answers about Earth," Tay said. "About why every attempt to restore Earth biology has failed." Yoon's eyes widened. Then he laughed, a strange sound from someone who had been alone for so long. "Follow me," he said. "I'll show you why." He led them through the facility to a secured door. After entering a long code, the door unlocked. Beyond was a tunnel leading underground, the primary containment lab, Yoon explained as they descended, where we kept our most important samples. The tunnel opened into a large underground chamber. In the center was a transparent dome, and inside the dome was something that made Hana gasp. A small garden, with plants that she recognized immediately. "Those are earth plants," she whispered. "Real earth plants." There were flowers with red and yellow petals, small trees with green leaves, plants that shouldn't exist anymore. "Yes," Yoon said. "I've been maintaining this garden for 20 years, using samples we saved from the original project." "But how?" Jin asked. "The restoration project failed." "It didn't fail," Yoon said firmly. "It was sabotaged." He walked to a control panel and brought up images on a large screen. They showed microscopic views of cells and bacteria. "We were succeeding," Yoon explained. "The earth plants were adapting well to Sanctuary. The ecosystem was stabilizing. Then something strange happened. Our samples began to deteriorate for no apparent reason." Sue moved closer to the screen, studying the images. "Some kind of pathogen?" "That's what we thought at first," Yoon said. "But then we realized the truth. The deterioration was happening at the quantum level." "That's not possible," Jin argued. "It shouldn't be," Yoon agreed, "unless something was deliberately targeting the specific quantum patterns in Earth biology." "Technology far beyond anything humans have developed?" Hana felt a chill. "The architects, the aliens June told us about." Yoon looked at her with surprise. "You know about them?" "Only what was in classified council files," June said. "That they might have been responsible for Earth's destruction." "They were," Yoon confirmed. "And they've been making sure we can't bring Earth back." Hana stepped forward, taking the jar of ashes from her pocket. "We found something in these Earth ashes." microorganisms that survived for 200 years. Yoon stared at the jar. "May I?" he asked, reaching for it. Hana hesitated, then handed it to him. Yoon carefully opened the jar and examined the ashes. "Where did these come from?" he asked. "Korea. My grandmother collected them before the evacuation." Yoon looked at her with new interest. "Your grandmother? What was her name?" "Min Kim. She was a botanist." A strange expression crossed Yoon's face. He walked quickly to a storage unit and pulled out an old notebook. Flipping through the pages, he stopped and showed it to Hana. "Was this her?" he asked. Hana looked at the faded photograph clipped to the page. It showed a group of scientists in lab coats. One of them was her grandmother, much younger than Hana had ever known her. "Yes," Hana said, surprised. "How do you have this?" "Min Kim wasn't just a botanist," Yoon said. "She was part of a secret network of scientists who suspected what was happening to Earth. They prepared for the worst." He carefully took a small sample of Hana's ashes and placed it in an analysis device. The results appeared on the screen. "Just as I thought," Yoon said, excitement in his voice. "These aren't just random ashes. This is a carefully prepared mixture of soil samples from multiple Earth locations, all containing dormant extremophiles with the same unique biological signatures." Tae looked at the results in amazement. "The microorganisms are all connected somehow, as if they're part of a larger system." "They are," Yoon confirmed. "Your grandmother was part of a group that discovered Earth's secret. Our planet had developed a biological backup system, a way to preserve and restore itself after catastrophe." He pointed to a small containment unit in the corner of the lab. "Let's try something," he said. "Let's introduce some of these ashes to Sanctuary's soil and see what happens." They watched as Yoon carefully prepared the experiment, mixing a small amount of Hana's ashes with local soil in a sealed environment. Hours passed as they monitored the results. Then before their eyes, something remarkable happened. The microorganisms from Earth began to multiply rapidly, connecting with each other and transforming the local soil. "It's working," Sue whispered. "They're adapting to Sanctuary." "No," Yoon said, his voice calm. 3 years passed on Sanctuary. In a hidden valley 5 kilometers from the old research facility, a miracle was growing. Hana walked slowly along a dirt path, her steps careful but steady. At 71, her health was failing, but she refused to let that stop her daily visit to the grove. Jin had built her a simple wooden cane that she leaned on as she walked. The path led to a small clearing surrounded by trees. Real earth trees, oak, maple, and cherry trees that had grown from the dormant seeds found in her jar of ashes. They were still young, only a few meters tall, but they were strong and healthy. In the center of the clearing stood a simple stone marker. Hana stopped before it and placed her hand on the smooth surface. The marker had no name, but everyone knew who it honored. Min Kim, Hana's grandmother, who had seen the end coming and prepared for a new beginning. "She would be proud of what we've accomplished," said a voice behind her. Hana turned to see Tai, approaching. Over the past 3 years, he had grown leaner and stronger from working outdoors. They all had changed since coming to Sanctuary. "Sometimes I wonder if she knew what would happen," Hana said. "If she planned for her ashes to end up here, on a distant world." "From what you've told me about her, I think she might have," Tae replied. They walked together toward the edge of the clearing where the trees opened up to reveal a view of the valley below. What had once been empty grassland was now divided into carefully managed sections. Some areas were dense with earth plants. Others contained controlled mixtures of earth and sanctuary species, testing how they would interact. In the distance, the curved shape of a shield generator was visible. Jin and June had designed it using parts from their crashed ship in the old research facility. The shield protected their work from orbital scans, keeping them hidden from council ships that occasionally passed by to monitor the quarantine. "How is the new sample site?" Hana asked. "Promising," Tae said. "The earth bacteria are changing the soil chemistry just as we hoped. Sue thinks we can plant the larger seedlings next month." They continued walking along a ridge that overlooked their small settlement. 5 simple buildings housed their living quarters, laboratories, and equipment. A 6th structure was under construction, a meeting hall where they could gather during the cold season. Their group had grown. 7 months after they crashed on Sanctuary, a Council science vessel had arrived to investigate strange energy readings. Instead of reporting them, 2 of the scientists had chosen to stay and join their work. Others had followed over the years, carefully recruited by June through his old Council contacts. Now 23 people lived in the valley, all committed to the same goal: restoring Earth's legacy and understanding why it had been targeted for destruction. Hana and Tay reached the main laboratory, where Sue was examining data on a large screen. She looked up as they entered. "The latest soil samples are amazing," she said. "The network is expanding faster than we predicted." The screen showed microscopic images of soil teeming with life. The Earth microorganisms from Hana's ashes had indeed formed a network, connecting with each other across distances and sharing information in ways that defied conventional biology. "Any signs of interference?" Tay asked. Sue shook her head. "Nothing. The quantum shielding is working." This had been Jin's most impressive achievement, developing shields that blocked the mysterious quantum-level attacks that had sabotaged the original restoration project. By studying the patterns of deterioration in Yoon's samples, he had created technology that protected their work from whatever methods the architects used. "We should check the communications array," Tay suggested. June said there might be a Council transmission coming today. They walked to the communications building where June and Jin were already monitoring the secure channel. After 2 years of hiding, they had made careful contact with allies within the Galactic Council, scientists and officials who questioned the ban on Earth restoration projects. "Anything?" Tay asked. "Just coming in now," June said, adjusting the controls. A message appeared on the screen. It was encoded, but Jin quickly translated it. "Good news," he said. "The Council is divided. A new faction is pushing to review the Earth ban. Our data packets have been making an impact. Over the past year, they had secretly sent scientific findings to trusted contacts in the Council. Evidence that Earth's biology wasn't dangerous, but revolutionary, capable of adapting and evolving in ways that could benefit all worlds." "And the other matter?" Hana asked. Jin's expression became serious. "Still unconfirmed, but there are more reports of unusual activity at the edges of known space. Something is moving out there. The architects, the mysterious aliens who had destroyed Earth, remained a shadowy threat. No human had ever seen one, but their actions were felt throughout the galaxy. Then we need to work faster," Hana said. Back in her small cabin that evening, Hana sat at her desk writing in a journal. She had kept a daily record since arriving on Sanctuary. Future generations would need to know their history, the truth about Earth and what had been done to preserve. Her health was failing. She knew she didn't have much time left. The doctor who had joined them last year had confirmed what Hana already suspected. Her heart was growing weaker. She might have a few more months, perhaps a year if she was lucky. There was a soft knock at her door. "Come in," she called. Sue entered, carrying a small container. Her face was bright with excitement. "We did it," she said. "The first flowers are blooming." She opened the container to reveal several small blooms with delicate white petals. Earth, daisies, grown from seeds that had been dormant in the ashes for 2 centuries. Hana touched one gently with her fingertip. "They're beautiful. And they're just the beginning," Sue said. "The soil network is spreading through the entire valley. Now soon we'll be able to grow anything from Earth's biosphere." After Sue left, Hana looked at the jar of ashes on her desk. It was nearly empty now. Most of the precious material had been carefully used in their experiments, each tiny sample creating a new link in the growing network of Earth life. The next morning, Hana rose early. She dressed slowly, her joints stiff and painful. But she was determined to complete what she had planned. She walked to the small stream that ran through the heart of their settlement. Everyone was still asleep, the sun just beginning to rise over the eastern hills. From her pocket, Hana took the jar of ashes. Only a small amount remained at the bottom, the last physical connection to the planet of her birth. She opened the jar and looked inside one final time. Then with a steady hand, she poured the remaining ashes into the flowing water. "Complete the cycle," she whispered. "Find your way home." The gray powder swirled in the clear water, then was carried downstream toward the fields and groves where Earth's legacy was taking root once more. As Hana watched the last traces disappear, she felt a strange sense of completion. Her grandmother had collected these ashes knowing they might someday be needed. Now 200 years later and light years from where they began, they were fulfilling their purpose. Later that day, Hana sat with Tai, Su, Jin, Jun, and Yun on a hillside overlooking their valley. Below them, the first cherry tree had begun to bloom, its pale pink flowers catching the afternoon sunlight. "We should send a message to the new council faction," Jin suggested. "Let them know what we've achieved here." "Not yet," Hana said. "Give it time to grow stronger first." "But the architects," Jun began. "The architects destroyed Earth because they feared what it was becoming," Hana said. "A world where life forms communicated and evolved together, sharing information across entire ecosystems. They feared it because they couldn't control it." She looked out at the growing patch of Earth life spreading through the valley. "Let it grow in secret a while longer," she continued. "Let it become strong enough to defend itself." Above them, seeds from the flowering plants drifted on the breeze, carrying Earth's legacy across their new world. Some would find soil prepared by the network of microorganisms. They would take root and grow, continuing the cycle that had begun centuries ago on a distant blue planet. Hana smiled as she watched them fly. Her grandmother had been right. Earth wasn't gone. It had just been waiting for the right moment to return. "Earth was gone," they said, Hana whispered, echoing the words she had written in her journal the night before. But in truth, it had never stopped waiting for its children to bring it home.